Well, as we get closer to one of the most important Scottish elections in recent times, I think it's important for people to know exactly who they're dealing with. A lot of people are familiar with the main parties, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, and when it comes to the SNP, the same party that's been in power for a long time, not many people know much about the SNP or the people in charge, all the members that they have, and all the elected officials that this party have given to Scotland and also in Westminster Parliament. All we know about the SNP, a lot of people out there know that, well, SNP are in favour of independence. They want to have a referendum to leave the United Kingdom, and also Nicola Sturgeon's in charge. Now, of course, it's probably best not to ask Nicola Sturgeon about what's happening in the SNP because she doesn't remember. She doesn't have a good memory. So in this video, we're going to give you a list of some of the SNP politicians and give you the true aspects of their characters and what we're dealing with. The latest we're hearing is that, as you've seen in the last few days, that Boris Johnson is prepared to go to court to stop Nicola Sturgeon introducing another Scottish independence referendum. And we've been covering that on this channel. We'll keep you guys posted on that as well. But let's give you a few examples of the sort of characters that the SNP have given us over the last few years. First, let's start with Derek Mackay, who is Scotland's former finance secretary. This guy got into trouble. Why? Because he was messaging a 16-year-old. Yes, an inappropriate series of messages that was sent to a child by Derek. Now, this is important because this list that we have, we're going to give you all these politicians from the SNP side. The SNP and Nicola Sturgeon have been very, very robust to criticise Boris Johnson on his character, to criticise the Conservatives and sometimes the Labour Party. That, these two main parties are corrupt and they have a lot of scandals. Well, we know that main political parties and politicians always have corruption in them. That's just how politics works, unfortunately. But doesn't mean that the SNP are immune. Now, Derek Mackay got into trouble because of this and, he had to obviously leave. Now, the issue I have is that he continued to take his £66,000 a year salary despite never coming back to Holyrood and the frontline politics in Scotland. Now, this is a problem because he said that I have mental health problems. I have to go deal with them. And because I have problems, I just can't help myself, stop myself from messaging kids. So he still got his £60,000 funded by the taxpayer. Don't know why, but that's what happened. Next, we have the former childcare minister, McDonald. Now, this guy had to also resign. Why? Because he was harassing people, particularly women. And he also liked to send a lot of text messages to a lot of people a couple of women who decided to complain. And the problem with text messages is that they are written evidence. People like Derek and Mark need to understand that if you want to be weird, well, firstly, don't be weird. If you want to be weird, don't get into public office. And two, don't send text messages. People can see them and you can't really hide your evidence. Now, this also is a 40-year-old man who was suspended by the SNP, but continued to represent his constituency as an independent. This is a big flaw that we have in our system, by the way, whereby a politician could get into trouble, could resign from their political party, but they will remain as a member of parliament or a councillor or a member of assembly, and they will just continue their work as an independent. This is not how you should do things in a democracy at this point, but we are dealing with the current system. So next we have Natalie McGarry, who is, another former member of the SNP, who decided to embezzle over £25,000 worth of taxpayers' money again. This was obviously combined with a lot of donations that were people funded to two main pro-independence groups. Now, Natalie, and people like Natalie, we have a lot of them, unfortunately, in Westminster, in Holyrood, and across the country in the political bubble. Now, the problem is, as I said, the reason this list matters is that all these SNP members have been very, very, very hard on criticising the Westminster politicos for misusing taxpayers' money or making mistakes or harassing people, which is, rightly, you have to criticize them. But they're not angels. This is not a group of, guardians of Scotland. This is the only way you could save Scotland because they are so clean. We're going to give you more of them in this video. We've got Fergus Ewing, who somehow managed to receive a lot of complaints for bullying civil servants and others. Now, the problem is when you go against civil servants, these people like their procedures and bureaucracy and, the HR processes. You can't get away with it. He received a lot of complaints and a number of other issues that he had. So he had to also get into trouble for this behavior. Now, when it comes to the dealings with the civil servants, we know that Nicola Sturgeon's senior team, there's a precedent there. We have seen the way they've been covering up the Nicola Sturgeon's evidence during the Salmond inquiry. And of course, people like Fergus Ewing have also received that sort of culture, and that's why they do it. But the problem is, this guy, that's not the only problem he has, because there's another story that came out that he was accused of breaking the rules over dinner with a man at the center of the £360 million taxpayers' cash scandal. Now, he met with a controversial banker at Greensill, of course, Greensill. And this guy, obviously, Sanjeev Gupta, is a banker. And he, during all this chaos that came out with David Cameron and all the other civil servants who were connected to Greensill, this SNP minister was also seen having dinner with him. And again, there's this double standards, because we did see Nicola Sturgeon coming out to criticize David Cameron, Rishi Sunak, and everybody else. And as I said, on this channel, I've criticized the establishment for any sort of corruption that we've had. And if there is a true scandal, always call it out, regardless of which party. But the double standards coming from the SNP is astonishing. Next, my favorite, Margaret Ferrier. The woman who, when the first lockdown started, she was a massive advocate of lockdown. And she was defending Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister for shutting down Scotland and kidnapping Scottish students. Say you can't visit your parents, you have to stay on campus. What did she do? She travelled up and down the country, a couple of times, just went around, got the train, and she actually tested positive. Despite testing positive, she decided to do that anyway. And, of course, she had to get kicked out. So Margaret Ferrier is a perfect example of double standards when it comes to the SNP behaviour. And, of course, finally, we have Alex Salmond. Now, Alex Salmond is a colourful character, let's just say. He has a really weird history. Is not likeable. He has recently decided to start a division within the pro-independence side in Scotland, and when it came to the row between Sturgeon and Salmond, of course I had to be objective, and it was Nicola Sturgeon who misled Parliament. But regardless of that, Alex Salmond is no angel, and we know the history behind Alex Salmond and all the things that he's done and said when he was in charge of the SNP. Now, last night we had the debate between the main leaders, the Tory party, Labour, Greens, and the SNP, and also the Liberal Democrats. And it was interesting because not much was said. Everything was predictable. Nicola Sturgeon repeated the same lines, and Douglas Truss, the Tory leader, but Anna Sawar, the Labour leader, was pretty impressive. And I'm not really surprised. The guy has been really good over the last couple of months. And I think if he had more time, he would have made some sort of difference when it comes to this upcoming election. But there was one point where he completely opened up the floor, and he actually exposed Nicola Sturgeon, because she's very obsessed with having the second independence referendum, regardless of the fact that she needs to really focus on recovering Scotland, especially economically.
Our manifesto is very clear. We want the next 5 years to focus on the national recovery. But just on that point about the recovery, Nicola Sturgeon has led us through the pandemic, and people can make the case about whether she's done that well or not. But you can't lead the recovery and also lead half the country at the same time. You either lead all the country and take us through the recovery, not half the country. You can't lead a referendum campaign and lead the recovery at the same time. It's simply not credible.
True. Absolutely right. How hard is it, by the way, for political leaders to be as good as Sawa? Putting aside their policies and their idiotic ideas that the Labour Party have in Scotland, as a performance and as a leader, Sawa is really good. And it's true. It's true. Nicola Sturgeon can't can't manage to lead half the country when she's focusing on the recovery. If she does this referendum, she will definitely split the country. So I just wanted to give you a list of some of the SNP characters so you're aware, if you're watching from Scotland, so you're aware how to vote in the upcoming elections. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to tune in the next video because we've got a lot coming up on my Tousi, and I'll see you guys in the next video.